Thank you for having me today. It's been great to listen to all the previous speakers. I'm quite happy to see different, a variety of audience, but I still glad you are all here. So today I'm going to take you through my research. I'm not going to talk about all of my research. I'm going to focus on one aspect. So I will talk about discourse and agency. Yeah, thank you. Right. So just to give you a bit of a context, I did my two-field work in Turkey, and particularly in Kilis, which is on the border between Turkey and Syria. This is one of the local newspapers. So I wanted to show how, Syrians in exile think of their, refugeehood experience and how they represent it, in newspapers. The study focuses on people living in camps, refugee camps, but also who are dispersed in different parts of the city. And I just want to highlight that one of the embarking points I went on before my first field visit is that I read this newspaper, the New York Times, about how to build a perfect refugee camp. And it was quite interesting because I wanted to see how true that is and how people really perceive that. So people, whether in camps or in cities, depend largely on aids from organizations, whether they are governmental or non-governmental. And this is an example of an ID card. It's locally called the kimlik, but its name is temporary protection, ID. And as you can see, it's both in Arabic and Turkish. With this ID, people let me tell you that I did my research between 2014 and 2015, so over 2 years. And around that time, refugees had very limited access to services for their work, education, health. It was quite hard for anyone to go, for instance, and have any insurance for getting medical treatment. Now, limited mobility, this is so much created by the security situation. And being on the borders, sometimes you have shells coming across the border, you have camps, denied access even to people who live. Sometimes, like if you're outside and you happen to come again, or you happen to be at the time that's not allowed again. But even more than that, like people who stay in Kilis and they wanted to travel to another city in Turkey, they needed a permission, so they had to go and queue in order to take the minibus or even a private car. It couldn't just be on the highway going to another place. More recently, we have seen double standards in offering citizenship. You may have heard that the Turkish government has started, the status of Syrians in Turkey are guests, so they don't even have refugee status. And now suddenly there is, discourse about citizenship, which is, very contradictory. So again, this is not applicable for all the Syrians. Lots of people apply with the hope that this will improve their, livelihood, but it doesn't apply to everyone. most of the time they would favor the people who are highly skilled, people who have, like white-collar professions, and they don't want to lose them because most of these go to Europe. So let's have a look at refugees in the discourse, how they have been, represented so far. It's quite a negative image that we can see, whether in the media or in research. They've been described as, groups, bunch, flawed victims, living, between life and death, bad life. I mean, some of the images can be quite grim, like, like generalities of bodies dead, wounded, starving, diseased, homeless. So all these, images, like with you, like as a researcher, going to the field and having like such, image in your mind about the refugee can be quite, impactful on how you deal with it when you're on the ground. And I just want to quote the UN, Convention on Refugees. I think some of the speakers mentioned it earlier, and I just want to highlight the word unable. So it's so much about ability. Like even in the UN Convention, they emphasize that these people are without ability. They are less than like a human being in terms of their agency. Now, how do refugees think of discourse about them? I wanted to quote some of the refugees who already work, with other refugees. This is an NGO worker. He says, the thing is, we are all here as refugees. We left our houses, we left, everything behind, and we have to look for somewhere safe for our children and for us. So this so much resonates with, the public, discourse that there is a crisis. These are victims running for safety. But what else? Again, this is a poem from a camp teacher. He says, childhood or refugee childhood is where tales of misery and narratives of pain lie, of a girl stealing tissues in Lebanon alleys. Despite the gunpowder, the pending death on roads and the smell of blood, a child's laughter breaks through the rocks. With eyes full of hope, she races against time, challenging hardships. Believe it or not, like someone living in such precarious situation, day in, day out, they always have, a silver lining for them to keep going. And I think I learned so much from them. So I just want to go back to the connection between how refugees embrace the public discourse. Actually, they have to, because they depend on, as I said, organization support. So they need to identify themselves as refugees so that they are given access to the services. Right. So I just wanted to emphasize that it does hinder, like this view of refugees as victims. It does hinder their ability to be agents for change. I'm not sure if you can read this, but this is an excerpt from a student's writing. So she was describing a friend she lost in the war. She says, I will never forget the laughter. I'm so sad because she left us and we lost a great person, but life doesn't stop. So you can see, like, there is this driving, power that keep these people going and make them want to continue their lives. Now, this is a teacher's narrative. again, this was a conversation with one of the teachers. He was telling me the story of another camp teacher who left the camp and took the journey to Europe. Again, that can be quite traumatic because he himself has heard lots of stories, and he will remember other stories. So he said, you know, teacher Mahmoud is the nickname. Yes, I know him. He migrated to Austria, but he faced the risk of drowning. His boat was steered by a man who didn't seem to have control of where he was going. He steered there, but it was all sea. The teacher narrated the survivor story of a geography teacher who used to teach at the camp school. The boat hit a cliff coming from inside, and the water and the people were falling in the water. Oh dear. It was dark, it was cold, no one knew, but if they were going to live after this. Did anyone die? No, hang on, no, actually it was another accident of another friend whose boat toppled, and the captain, the smuggler, and the third passenger drowned. So you can see lots of their stories report on not just local narratives, but also brings, the narrative beyond, Turkey. Let me now bring you to some definition of what's agency. So the notion of agency, conceptualized as social or centralizes people, make them the center of the discourse. They are the social actors who process their own experiences and those of others while acting upon their experiences. Some refugees do not recognize the new opportunities available to them due to traumatized and loss of resources. Others seem to fare better. Individual decisions, experiences, and life courses have to be seen as part of a larger cultural, socio-political, and environmental framework that holds advantages as well as constraints. So you can see that some people do realize that they have the ability to change, but within all the constraints that they're living in, this could be undermined, but it's still there. Now, when a refugee helps a refugee, this is an example again from an NGO perspective, NGO worker. I came to Turkey in July 2013. I worked as a teacher in the refugee camp school for 1 year. We survey Syrian houses. Every day we visit about 6 houses. Every case is harder than the other. Some suffer from poverty, others from poor health. All say they find it hard to find a job in the city, and if they find one, the salary is very low. Whenever we go to visit a family, I feel somehow fine, but after the visit, I feel worse. Now, actually, I joined one of these NGO workers to their family visits. It's not easy because they have to do their best to help the people at the time where people feel they are vulnerable, and they might not want to reveal some information. So it's very tricky for the NGO workers to help them. Again, another example of, because I mainly worked with teachers, so she said, I have lost a dream, I have been here for 4 years, and I didn't do anything. You feel stuck, you wait for something, but it takes so long, and you never know whether you would get it. I have started my application at the Turkish scholarship, but I can't proceed as I need to obtain a statement of marks from Syria, but they say it is not possible, and you need to get it yourself. I can't go back to Syria. My aunt was arrested recently, and she told me that I won't be able to tolerate it if I was in her place. They would swear at her, and I won't be able to keep quiet, said the English teacher who was teaching 8th grade at Syrian school, which I wanted to visit today. So you can see some of the narratives are reported through the refugees themselves. Some of them have been reported second-hand through my own observation, ethnographic observation. Right, now how can we help refugees gain agency. This is a picture from an English class where the teacher introduced Sandra. Female students were taking roles, and just to give you an idea, like before this class happens, the teacher of the class would be taking part in a workshop where she goes through the story, and she gets to be in the student's position, learning about the story and then acting it. So I want to say here that drama creates a space. It does enable one to act upon their experiences and aspirations. It gives that space which really empowers not just the students but also the teachers who are teaching them. So it wasn't just drama. Actually, I wasn't only the only person in the field trying to empower people. There are others who happen to have some skills, maybe have been teachers at some time, and they wanted to contribute as well. I really wanted to play this video, but we have some